Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we're going to be doing an updated Decidueye release tier list. Now, this is still a little preliminary, and we kind of just have to see how everything falls. I don't really reference back my old tier list when I do this, so sometimes things might change a little bit, but let's go on ahead and dive into it. So I have Decidueye in my file, and actually I need to make sure to save my file because I do my own tier list maker. If you guys have seen, I do this all in Photoshop. Let me go ahead and save my file and let's dive in. So Sylveon, let's go ahead and start with Sylveon. She's who I have at the top. I think laning mage, A tier, really solid character in the meta. Hyper Voice is still incredibly strong. You just can't really go wrong with Hyper Voice. Sylveon gets Unite Move at 8, is really solid in the tri-lane. The thing about this character is that it's not really great in solo queue, but I don't think that any of the mages are great in solo queue, casters, because it's just hard to solo carry. So I'm trying to give some information on solo queue, but a really, really strong Pokemon. Mamoswine. You know, my opinion of Mamoswine has been really weird lately. I think that this character is not quite as bad as some of the C tier picks that I might be throwing on the list, but I'm putting it back here intentionally because I think that the character is really, really close to being pretty bad in the game. I may move this, like, this is basically in a sense like bottom of B tier. I may put this Pokemon at high C tier. I just think that this is like one of the worst tanks in the game. The early game is so phenomenal, but the character just like takes way too long to get Unite. The Unite's not even that good. It just is really hard for this character to get a lot done. I love the character, I really do. I was in love with it when it came out, but sadly the character's just struggling to keep up. Alolan Ninetales with the buffs. I think that Alolan Ninetales finds its way, if it wasn't already here, at the very like pinnacle peak of B tier. I think that, you know, it may be a little trivial to say very bottom of A tier or like in between. I think I've done that in the past, but I don't quite see Ninetales, even with the buffs, really being the lane attacker, the mage, the casting attacker that you want to pick. It's hard to carry solo. Again, same thing, really hard to carry solo. In team play, it's definitely good. You can build some good CC lanes and have a decent lane, but it still doesn't scale super well into the end game. The Unite move is okay. I still think this character needs a little bit of help. As for Talonflame, I think Talonflame is a great, phenomenal A tier pick. The character's really strong, and the jungle role has a lot of flexibility for picks. So it's hard to put this character when there's some others that I want to throw into the S tier, but I think that Talonflame is very strong. Very good pick for solo queue. Tons of stealing potential, tons of carry potential. Really, really good jungler. Slowbro. Slowbro's going to find himself in the B tier as a jungler. It's kind of the same thing with Mamoswine, just not great. I don't think it's as bad as Mamoswine, ironically. I think that Slowbro's probably better. Doesn't have as good of an early game, but unfortunately, some of the defenders in this game, they just don't really cut it. Slowbro being one of them. You know, playing tanks is tough in solo queue, so I don't know if I need to say anything there. But yeah, Slowbro, not that great of a pick. Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime might be S tier. I'm going to comfortably put Mr. Mime in A tier. You know, one of the supporters that gets played as a defender, kind of. Really, really strong in the tri-lane. Really, really strong Unite move. Brings burst, brings CC, brings, you know, like I said, damage. Good for solo queue if you like playing the tankier kind of role. Very disruptive. Amazing character. As for Lucario, this is the S tier character of the game. Undeniable to me. Insane laning phase. Ridiculously powerful. Tanky. High mobility. Does everything in the game but heal, essentially. Lucario is insane. Ridiculous character. A very, very broken character, in my opinion. Greninja. A part of me, you know, I'm kind of like ordering things on the line. I don't usually do this, but Greninja, I think, is A tier. I think A tier Greninja makes sense to me. I'm just going to go ahead and put it up here. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Greninja's pretty solid A tier. I don't think it's the best attacker in the world. It's not great in lane, but it's really good in jungle. You can lane the character, especially if you're solo queuing it. You can lane it. It's whatever. Still brings a lot of carry potential to the team. Surf build, solid. Water Shuriken build, insane. Very versatile character. Very, very good pick, in my opinion. As for Gengar, unfortunately, Mr. Gengar, you're just not that good. I think it's one of the worst characters in the game. I would You know, it's funny because I would say arguably I wouldn't mind having a Gengar more than a Mamoswine, but the problem is I just don't think, I don't know if that's true. I really don't. I think that Gengar can only burst like one person and then the character just feels useless. It can't really lane, so you can't really get away with laning it unless you're just forcing it to be in lane. It struggles. You have to take the jungle role. The jungle role is super important, especially in this game. So yeah, I would rather have a laning Mamoof than a jungle Gengar. Unfortunately for me, I just feel like this character's struggling so bad. Some people would put it maybe low C tier or in C tier. For me, I just like, I don't want it anywhere near my games most of the time. As for Gardevoir, you know, I know people put this below Gengar. I think Gardevoir scales into endgame well, really, really well. I put Gardevoir in the C tier. The character, it's, you know, it doesn't scale, or it doesn't ramp up fast enough. It takes so long to get to the Unite move. It struggles so hard. You have to jungle it, kind of. You can lane it, kind of. But the character is undeniably insanely strong at 10 plus, but you got to get it there. And unfortunately for the character, really falls short. Speaking of falling short, Garchomp. I don't even think I need to say anything, but for the sake of the discussion, the character does nothing. The character does nothing. You're just constantly chasing after people. You're so slow. You're not that tanky. You don't do that much damage. It takes forever to ramp up on the character. You just can't do enough with this character. It's way too much buildup for a character that just needs to get going. And the crazy thing is, you get this character to 15 and you're insane, but it just never really matters. As for Eldegoss, best support in the game, S tier support, is such a meta-defining character. Every single move except for like Cotton Sport is phenomenal. Pollen Puff, good heal. Leaf Tornado, insanely meta. Makes characters miss, disengage, engage. Fast mobility, I mean, it's just incredibly strong. With an amazing Unite move, ranged damage it brings to the table. You have a crazy heal on the Unite move, like I said. The character is the support of the game, the healer of the game. Insane character. Crustle. Crustle finds its way in the B tier as a tank, really unique tank that the game has. And, you know, maybe I feel like I don't know if I'm doing this character enough justice, but I do think that it sits in the B tier. I'm kind of lining up the tanks in order because I do think that this makes a little bit of sense to me. But Crustle, I think, is definitely better than Slowbro and Mamoswine. Still a B tier pick, but I'm kind of organizing it in a way that gives it a little bit of room. I think Crustle's a fine pick. I think it has a couple of different builds with Stealth Rocks and you know, Scope Lens that you can do. I think you can go X-Scissor and kind of be more of like that in-your-face kind of tank. Really disruptive, really annoying tank, but unfortunately not the best tank in the world, but really, really strong. As for Greedent, I think that this Pokemon is really good. Super annoying, super disruptive, hard to punish. Me and Lush talk about this all the time. This character is very unpunishable. Covet, Stuffed Cheeks, running around, doing whatever you want. You don't bring a ton of damage to the table, but it's undeniably very good. I really like Greedent. I still think that Greedent has a really strong A tier position in the meta. As for Cramorant, unfortunately, I think that Cramorant has just fallen from grace. Sitting in the B tier, I would rather have a Ninetales. I do think that Cramorant's early game gives it the upper edge as a caster, a mage attacker over like someone like Gardevoir. So it still can get some work done, but it struggles. It's hard to be a Cram these days. A solid pick though, you know, I mean, it's not that bad. It's tough to be a Cram though. Really, really tough to be a Cram. As for Cinderace, I do think that, you know, when it comes to putting Cinderace on this list, oh man, this is where things get a little hard. Because I do think that Cinderace clearly outclasses Greninja. And I don't usually organize things, but I think for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to. I think that they're both A tier. In some situations, with certain metas, I've put Cinderace in S tier. A part of me wants to do that. It becomes very trivial because I'm basically putting Cinderace like on the line here, which I could do. But I think Cinderace is just very high A tier. You know, maybe I should organize it for attackers and for defenders and for tanks and things of that nature. Maybe I should do that. I don't know. If I'm doing it, this is what it looks like. So, you know, we got Speedster tanks right here, kind of supporter tanks. This is what it would look like, I guess, in a sense. Cinderace, very high A tier. I'm kind of doing it naturally anyways in the organization of things, so I guess why not, you know? Why not do it in that way? So that's what Cinderace is. Very good for solo queue if you can get the jungle position. Good carry potential, good steal potential, incredibly strong. Blastoise. I think Blastoise is A tier. But if Blastoise is A tier, It doesn't matter. I could put Blastoise here, I could put Blastoise here. We're going to put Blastoise at the very tippity top of B tier. Probably even more so. Look, I'm grabbing my background. Probably even more so than, say, like Ninetales or Cram. I guess, like I said, I don't usually organize things, but I kind of am for this one for whatever reason. I think Blastoise is easy bottom of B tier, or bottom of A tier, high B tier, however you want to put it. I think it's trivial again. I could put it up here, it doesn't really make a difference. Blastoise is really good, probably one of the better tanks in the game. Greedent is more annoying and disruptive. Blastoise is like an actual tank. You know what? No, I have to put it up here. I have to. It just makes the most sense. Because I do think that Blastoise definitely outclasses the other tanks, and so I want to put it in a higher class. As far as being like an actual tank, you know, it's just the early game's not that great. These tanks, these two defenders just do really different things. So while they are defenders, I don't really know which one to put in front of the other. I don't think it matters that much. Really solid, brings an amazing Unite move, lots of CC, decent damage to the table. Blastoise is a great pick. That's where I want to put that. I don't know what more to say. As for Absol, I'm not going to lie. I think Absol is a very high B tier speedster. The character doesn't quite break the threshold. I think that Talonflame is better. I think that the character struggles a little bit to push itself through that A tier. But in solo queue, in ranked, you can do so much with this character. The character's really good. It's almost here. You know what I mean? It's almost in A tier. It just falls a little bit short. Absol, really, really fun, really effective, and really solid. As for Charizard, we have our first all-rounder making the A tier. I think the character's a phenomenal jungler. I think that you can't lane it, so you have to jungle it. It kind of counters some of the attackers in the game, or just counters the attackers in general. Very backline diver. You can't really solo queue carry with this character, but if you get ahead, you're going to be naturally carrying in general because you're just popping off and shredding everything. But the character's good. Not quite S tier good, but better than a lot of Pokemon in the game, especially coming out of that jungle role, if you ask me. As for Pikachu, Pikachu is an A tier attacker. It is. I think that, you know, Pikachu falls somewhere in line here. This is where things get complicated because I have to start shoving everything down. Got to shove it all down now. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it, right? But this is kind of where Pikachu falls. I think that Pikachu is a great attacker, fits really, really well in lane, and yeah, it's a solid pick. It's a really solid pick. It's hard, again, same thing with the mage attackers. You've heard me say it. It's really hard to pick Pikachu and solo carry a game. But, you know, Pikachu is a solid choice. You can't go wrong with Pikachu in the meta currently. Solo queue, it's tough though. As for Venusaur, oh man, this is why stacking the A tier is tough. I think I need to make some separations. I do. Or do I just front load the A tier? This is why things are tough, right? It just depends on like how much of a tier list should have density to it. Because I could easily put Venusaur here, right? You know, I could do it. It's not that hard. I slide them over. I put them up here. There we go. Venusaur. That's the reality. Or do I throw Greninja down in high B tier, you know? Really just comes down to something like that in my opinion. But I think that's comfortable. Character, incredibly strong for solo queue. Incredibly strong for team play, competitive. Very hard to kill. This attacker is anti-other attackers. You just dive them and go crazy. Petal Dance Giga Drain, insanely tanky, insanely high damage. You just can't go wrong playing Venusaur. That's where we're at. As for Zeraora, I think Zeraora is an S tier speedster. I really do. This character does some insane damage. You know, this character can lane, but I do think that it's best as jungle because it does have that level 10 Unite move. And I'm not necessarily putting the character in S tier because I think it's the best jungler, but I'm putting it in S tier because it's an insanely heavy carry potential character. Like very, very insane heavy carry potential character. So that's what I want to do with it. That's what I want to do with it. As for Wigglytuff, Wigglytuff falls in line down here somewhere. Really strong, like, defender supporter. Couldn't have it really any other way, if you ask me. The character's just really, really good. Brings a lot to the table. Good supporting, good CC, good Unite move. really good for solo queue, actually. I think Wiggly is a really good solo queue kind of like carry, if you ask me. As for Snorlax, you know, this is why I'm having a problem, is because I think that all of this is just like, I think that my tier list is really weighted, but it's, if anything, it's making me want to put more things in the S tier. And the reason why is because I think that Snorlax is like an S tier defender, but that doesn't necessarily make it the best tank in the game, because I do think that you have like things like Wiggly and Mime that can easily go toe to toe with it. So this is making me want to restructure a little bit. Because I don't want to just stack all my tiers so heavily, but this feels more accurate, if I'm being honest. If I have to make the separations, I just put more of the tanks down here and I hierarchy them better. And I just tell you why, like, these two are just much stronger than the others, but not so much stronger that they can take the place of some of these other, you know, tanky kind of characters or defenders, supporter defenders that get played. I know they're not actual defenders, but they get played as tanks and they're really good at it. So that's how I'm going to structure it. Again, I think it is trivial to say bottom of A tier, high B tier, because it's just a line, right? This is just a black line that defines the value between the characters. That is how I feel about them in terms of strength. Like if I'm building a strength line, instead of building it horizontally, I might as well build it vertically. So as for Machamp, you know, Machamp's fallen from grace. And by falling from grace, I mean, it's just not that great. But I don't think it's that bad. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's a pretty B tier jungler. As an all-rounder, you know, it struggles to get the job done, but it's not that bad. It's pretty strong. It's got a good Unite move. It can jungle, it can gank. Pretty B tier. It's like it's the same thing as Absol. Like, it can get some work done, but it's not the best pick, right? Really solid though. Here we are, finally. I was wondering when we were gonna get there. Decidueye. You're gonna make me shuffle my whole list around a little bit more. Decidueye is A tier, strong A tier, probably the highest of A tiers, sitting in the likes of Venusaur, Cinderace, and Decidueye. I don't know. Between these three right here, if I'm being honest with you, they're all even because they do different things. This is your long range, or this is like your, you know, long range, but much safer 80 carry, good damage. This is your very long range, almost no mobility, insane 80 carry, crazy auto attack damage from Decidueye. And then Venusaur is like the anti-attacker, I'm going to run at everyone's face, crazy damage attacker. And then you have Sylveon, who's like the high mobility burst mage. It's really, really crazy how it's really, really crazy. You know, part of me feels like I may not have enough S tier picks, and maybe I should lean some characters that high up, but I'm not going to. I think that Blissey, however, is an A tier supporter. So I want to slide some things over a little bit more, I suppose, in a sense. We'll just put Charizard like half off the screen. Whatever, man. Got old thick girl Blissey taking up all this room, you know what I mean? But yeah, this is the tier list right here. This is the tier list right here. Let me structure it a little bit better just to fit all these A tier picks, and then I'll do like a quick recap and I'll explain some of these picks one last time. Lucario, insane, ridiculous character. Eldegoss, undeniably the best support. Nobody can hold a flame to it supporting wise. Zeraora, some of the best burst damage, crazy team fight potential in the game. Decidueye, one of the best 80 carries, hands down, no question. Very different from Cinderace. Less safety, more damage. More safety, less damage. The anti-attacker, Venusaur, all-rounder, basically, runs at everybody, runs them down, hard to kill, does crazy damage. Sylveon, the formidable mage, the one mage that breaks through, because the other mages really struggle to do it, the casting types that struggle to do it, but Pikachu really holds its own as well. Not gonna lie, I say it's the one mage, but it was right next to Pikachu. I don't know why I said that. Pikachu, really solid, brings crazy damage to the early game, which means that even though Pikachu doesn't scale super great in the late game, it helps you win the laning phase, which is valuable. And it doesn't scale so bad like Gardevoir, right? Like, it's like the anti-Gardevoir. It doesn't scale super great, but still useful. This is like, it's like really good early game, doesn't scale super great. This is like useless early game, scales incredibly great. But it's so bad in the early game you can't play it. This is not so bad in the late game that you can play it. So these are your two mages that kind of make it through. Greninja, super solid. I can't put Greninja in B tier, you know what I mean? But it does make its way down the list in A tier. If I did put Greninja in B tier, it would be such a trivial, like, this is Greninja B tier, and then I would have comments where it's like, Greninja's B tier? Like, what are you saying? Right? So I can't put Greninja in B tier. As for the Speedster of A tier, Talonflame, insane. Not quite S tier in my opinion, but really strong. Solo queue, team play, whatever the case may be. We have our two defender supporters in Mime and Wiggly. They're basically tanks. They get played as tanks. They're great tanks. They're great in the tri-lane. They're great picks. Can't go wrong picking these two picks. The best tank in the game, in my opinion, Snorlax. Like the actual tank, I mean defender. The best defender, hands down, Snorlax crazy. Blissey, a solid support. You can't go wrong with Blissey, especially if you're playing ranked, but in the current meta, you're going to see a lot of Eldegoss. That's why Blissey's chilling in A tier. As for the one all-rounder that really makes it through, we do have our Charizard. Great in the jungle. That's about it. It's really niche. It's kind of a counter pick to some attackers or just heavy attacker teams in general. Really solid, but it does struggle to make it through in the meta. Again, I think the difference between putting it like here and here is negligible, but I do think that Charizard is good enough to be in this lineup, even though, albeit barely on the screen. Absol, solid. You can get good value out of it. The whole list of B tier is like solid. You're going to get good value out of it, but it's just hard to win with, kind of. Absol, solid. You're going to get great value out of. Actually, this is the one mon that actually should be like distanced away from the rest of them. Like, what are you doing putting me in this list? Same with Blastoise, kind of. Ninetales, solid mage, caster, attacker Pokemon, but just struggles so hard. Same with Cram. The unjust nerf to Cram's ult. Unnerf the nerfed ult. Machamp, again, same deal. Really good, but just struggles to really break through that barrier of being a great Pokemon. As for Blastoise, Blastoise is incredible. I feel like people are going to give me some feedback on this one. It's just his laning phase isn't that great. It's not the best. You don't see this played in a lot of competitive because there's just other tanks or picks that do better in lane. But the character's Unite move is phenomenal. I think if anything, and I mean, this is a me thing, I love tanking in jungle. So I think that you could see these characters rise in viability if there were more people playing it as tanks in jungle or playing it as like pseudo tanks, off tanks in jungle. But nonetheless, as a tank, I think it sits pretty comfortably at the highest position in the B tier for the defender role. Greedent. It feels weird to put Greedent in B tier, but I think when I have to stack a roster like this, what choice do I have unless I just really tighten in the roster, you know? If I bring it in a lot more and just slide him up, you know? I don't know. But Greedent, phenomenal pick. Really annoying. I don't think he's super game-changing or anything. It feels weird to put Greedent in B tier. Because Greedent's better than Absol, right? It feels weird. Maybe there's just an understood that like these two characters kind of really belong at the bottom of A tier. You know, they're like this. I don't know. It's weird. These characters are all a little bit like this, if I'm being honest. And then you have these other tanks that are pretty solid, but they don't really get the job done. Gardevoir, same deal. Just really struggles to get to where the character can get the job done. And then you have these two picks. So, nothing crazy here, unfortunately for them. So there you have it, friends. This is what I've been thinking with the meta. I know some of these spots are weird. Even to me, I think some of these placements are weird. But dude, the balance of this game, I'm not going to lie. I've been saying this for a bit. I think the balance in this game is pretty solid. They do a pretty good job balancing the game. I'm pretty pleased with it. I think Decidueye came out. I'm not displeased. I think the character is crazy strong, but not broken. Awesome. So friends, drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. I would love to know. This may change in time. This may change with what metas develops competitively, what teams do. This is where I'm at currently. As always, friends, be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone that you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.